So here's an interesting fact for you. With all the safety gear that you're required to have on your boat, both recreational and even more so when you're a UPV, there is no mention of needing to have an anchor. But yet, when we go through our trainings about navigational lights, we do have to have an anchor light. And some of the larger vessels need to have those day shapes on board as well. It's kind of odd that there's no requirement for an anchor, and I consider that a critical piece of safety. If you're out in the inlet, for example, and all of a sudden you lose power, you're at the mercy of the wave. So you want to be able to deploy something to put those brakes on, and having one anchor on board is always a good idea. Having two so you can throw one off the stern is even better idea. Alright guys, so thanks for joining me once again. We're out here on the Bonnie Lee. We are currently situated on the wash rack because we have a little bit of maintenance that we need to address. So what I'm working on today is not the windlass, but the anchor rod itself. And a lot of people say it's the anchor rope or it's the anchor chain, but the mechanism for which the anchor is secured to the boat is referred to as the anchor rod. So what had happened is when I bought the boat, I had an old anchor rod in the boat already attached to this Lewmar anchor, and it wasn't feeding out and was bunching up when it was feeding back in when I was retrieving the rope part of it. And it was just bunching up really bad. It wasn't laying flat down here in the anchor locker. So I went ahead and replaced it with a brand new anchor chain and 8 plate rope. And what I discovered is there was 2 things actually going on with the boat: an old 3-strand anchor rope and a damaged gypsy head. So when I put this brand spanking new rod in the boat and deployed it for the first time, when I got up to the top section and it was really under some stress here at the gypsy head, I started chewing up all of this rod. And so now we got to cut off the bad section and resplice it to the chain. So we also have a brand new gypsy head on here to avoid that. So we're going to go take this over to the shop and we're going to see how we can get this respliced and put back on the boat. All right, so we just got back from the shop. We've got our 8-plate rope respliced to the anchor chain. Unfortunately, I was not able to get any of that video of the process of how they rebraid that, but it was above my skill set. It's something I'm going to have to learn, but I wasn't willing to take the chance on it just yet. So we're going to get this reinstalled into the boat, and we're going to take a look at the difference between the 8-plate that I have and the 3-strand that came out, so that you can make a better decision of what you want to replace on your vessel. So stick around, we've got more to go. We're going to get this put on right now. Got a little Allen screw on top here. We got to take this cap off so we can feed the anchor rod back down inside the chain locker. Now this is a Lewmar windlass. I did have to change this gypsy head here because it wasn't discovered that all the little teeth in here that grab the rope and chain, it wasn't discovered until I put the new rope on that this was damaged. So we had to get that fixed. So this is the bitter end of the rope here, and that's what's going to be tied in down below. And I'm going to secure it right to a shackle. Now we're going to start feeding the rope through. And we're just going to let this free fall into the chain locker. We don't want to coil it or wrap it or bunch it up. We want it to fall neatly in there. So this 8-plate rope is a lot more supple. It's very bendy and it flows really nicely down inside the chain locker here. And that's important because that free fall from the top deck down to below is important. So when you're winching your anchor rod back in, it just lays in there and doesn't bunch up, because if it starts to stack, it's gonna bunch up real bad inside the gypsy and risk tearing up or binding, and then if you're in a tight spot and trying to maneuver and your anchor rod's all bunched up, you're in trouble. So here's a look at the 3-strand. This is what came off the boat when I replaced it with the new 8-plate. So the 3-strand rope, in my opinion, I think this stuff is a little bit more durable for abrasions, but as you can see, it's pretty stiff. It doesn't lay flat. And that was one of the problems I ran into, was when I was deploying this 3-strand that was on the boat, when I would retrieve it, there was a problem with line twist that I could not get out, and there was also a problem with it stacking too high and not enough free fall into the chain locker. So what was happening is that rope was bunching up towards the top where it goes into the hole, and when it would do that, this whole thing would just bind up, and there was no up motion, no down motion, so I had to come from behind the helm, come up here, reach under, try to untangle things, and then go back to retrieving, and it just became a really large headache. So between it being super stiff and stacking too high, it was a problem that I needed to solve. I can't obviously have any more free fall because the dimensions of this box are set. So when I went to the 8-plate, here's what I found out, is I can get a lot more 8-plate into the same size room than the 3-strand. The 8-plate is a lot more supple when it's not under load, so it lays flat, it bends, and it hugs all the different contours inside of here, so I can stack on more rope in the same size space. Now what's interesting though is the 8-plate, even though I think it's a little bit more susceptible to fraying and damage here at the gypsy head or coral or rocks that are in the water, it does have the exact same tensile strength as the 3-strand when it's under load. So all those little braids, they just tighten down on themselves and become a solid unit. So the benefit of being able to put more rope in the boat and have less problems here at the gypsy head at the sake of maybe a little bit more abrasion was well worth the trade-off than messing with this 3-strand. Now sometimes you do have to come up here because it piles up really tall. We want it to kind of pay out, so we're just going to fluff it just to get it to lay flat, but we're not going to try to bunch it all up. We're just trying to spread it out inside this box. I'm going to bring that up and around. That's ready to go. We can put our cap back on. Okay, now that we've got the rope and chain down in the locker, we're going to re-secure the bitter end of the chain back to the swivel on the anchor. Now that we've got that all done, now the only thing left to do is try it out. So one thing every boater should know, and a lot of them don't, is when you're paying out your anchor rope, you have to do a little bit of simple math. And you want to pay out about 6 foot up to 10 foot of road for every 1 foot of water depth that you're in, plus the distance from the surface of the water to the pulpit here at the bow. So it's important to be able to have as much anchor road inside your chain locker as possible. For example, with this old 3-strand road, This is only 120 foot plus 10 foot of chain, and it was causing problems with having too much inside the box. When I switched over to the 8 plate, I was able to step up to 200 feet of rope with 30 feet of chain, and it actually takes up a little bit less space inside the chain locker, which allows me to anchor in a little bit deeper depths. One thing that you need to note is when you are setting your anchor, you want to pay out at least 6 feet up to 10 feet of your rode for every 1 foot of water depth. And the higher on that scale you go is going to be dependent on the conditions that you're in. Windier days or bigger tidal swing days, or days where it's a lot more rough with the waves, you're going to want to pay out more anchor rode. If you're in the calm bays where there's light wind and no current, you can get away with paying out that 6-to-1 ratio. So you want to make sure that you have enough anchor rode in your boat for the areas that you're going to be anchoring in. Now, I'm limited to about a maximum depth of 38 feet and as little as 25 feet following that 6-to-10-to-1 ratio. So what happens when I want to go fish out in 200 foot of water and stay on my spot and not get blown around? I need to bring on an extra anchor and a bulk spool of anchor line that I can keep in a large basket. Because if I'm in 200 foot of water, simple math, at 6-to-1, I want to have about 1,200 feet of line in the boat. That's a lot more than what I can store up here. But I do have space right below my feet. So when I get ready to go do those trips, I'll bring on the extra anchor and throw it overboard manually and not use the electric windlass. So that wraps up this episode of the anchor rode and the damage that a gypsy head can cause to it. I hope you enjoyed it. Please drop me your comments below. And if you have any suggestions on how I can improve the content I'm bringing you, I'd love to hear them. In the meantime, we've got a lot more to cover, so let's get after it.